and I stand there and I stand there, and I know she's off the phone and she's not coming in and telling me what's going on. So I turn around and my cardiologist walks in the door. So he closes the door, graciously asks me to sit down. So I sit down with attitude. And he apologizes for the first time. I think he apologized like 7 times, 6 or 7 times throughout the appointment. Hey you guys. It's been a little bit since I updated you, and I wanted to update you before the next round of blah 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 starts, so I can at least somewhat have an idea what happened. So the last big appointment that I had was cardiology. It was a couple days ago, and I really like my cardiologist. He is very well versed in EDS and POTS, and has enough of the feelers for the MCAS and all the other stuff. So long story short, I waited 3 hours past my appointment time to actually see him. My appointment was at like 11:15 and I didn't see him until 2:15. And I never wait that long for any doctor. Like, if I show up 5 minutes late, you know, they're gonna be like, oh, I'm sorry you missed your appointment, and make another appointment. But for some reason, you know, with them, they can just do whatever and they think it's okay. So I would never stay that long, ever, ever, ever. But I stayed for whatever reason. And by the 3-hour mark, I had quite the pissy attitude. And I opened the door and my nurse happened to be like right outside, and I was like, you know, this is nothing but a follow-up and I'm just supposed to go over blood work. Can I just have a copy of my blood work, and I'm gonna leave because this is ridiculous. And I left the door open because yes, I am gonna stare at you while you do your job. So she's trying to like whisper on the phone or whatever. It was super cute. And I turned around at one point. The room that I was in has this gigantic picture window like out in the parking lot for the whole hospital. And so I was, you know, like watching everybody else and whatnot. And I stand there and I stand there, and I know she's off the phone and she's not coming in and telling me what's going on. So I turn around and my cardiologist walks in the door. So he closes the door, graciously asks me to sit down. So I sit down with attitude. And he apologizes for the first time. I think he apologized like 7 times, 6 or 7 times throughout the appointment. And he said he just had all sorts of other patients that, like 3 of them that morning, that had taken an hour per appointment, and each appointment had only been allotted like 20 minutes, something like that. He seemed incredibly frazzled, which I understand. So, you know, you can't just be unpissy all of a sudden. So I'm still rocking the pissy, like real good. And he was looking through like my paperwork and stuff, and cardiology, I'm at cardiology, okay? And then out of nowhere, he says, how is your Sjogrens? And it was like, I was so stunned by the question that I couldn't even answer. Like, I was just like, So I really had to like sit there and like think about it, like think about my answer. And so I was like, it's bad. I said, you know, I'm doing all the things, you know, and my eyes have never been worse. I'm having salivary gland issues, like up one side and down the other. And then obviously, you know, it affects my GI tract with all of that, you know, happy business that I have going on. And he was like, well, I wondered if you realized how much it can impact your GI tract, you know, with all my GI problems and whatnot. And I was like, oh, absolutely. I said, I'm well versed in how much that it can affect my, motility and all the rest of the issues that I have. And so he starts telling me about, so he asked me about all that and we chat about it and whatnot. And then he said, have you ever heard of something called SIBO? And I'm like, no. I was like, spell it. So he spelled it SIBO. And he was like, have you ever been tested for it before? And I was like, I absolutely don't think so. I said, I'm not familiar with it at all, and I normally remember anything medical about myself. And so what started like this whole conversation is I have failed out of all of the other GI medication for gastroparesis, except for one, which is erythromycin, which is the last one that my GI normally prescribes. And so I had just failed out of one of the other meds that morning and told my GI about it. And so we were gonna move to the erythromycin, and she said she had to have an EKG because there was some number on it that they needed to make sure that my heart was good enough to take the med. And so I was already going to cardiology that day, so they told me what they needed to know, like copy of my EKG that they needed. And so I was gonna get that because I have one done every time I go to cardiology. So I get into cardiology that day and told them that I needed to have a copy of the EKG, before I left so that I could get it to my GI and why I was getting it to them. And they said, absolutely fine. And so when I had my EKG, they totally brought me in a copy and it was super perfect. Here, it looked weird. So because of me asking for it is why he was asking about the Sjogrens and the SIBO and all that good stuff. Okay, now you're caught up. And so of course I've never heard of this. I don't know what it is. And so he told me just a tiny little bit about it. It's a small intestine bacterial overgrowth. A lot of people with all of my special snowflake apparently have this kind of overgrowth of bacteria in their small intestine. Most people's small intestine is about 17 feet long. So when you have an endoscopy, you get to see the top part of it. When you have a colonoscopy, you normally get to see the very bottom of it, but the whole section of feet of your intestine in the middle, you never get to see. So you can have all of those tests and it be fine, but there could be something in the middle that they don't know about. So he greatly discouraged me from taking the erythromycin before I talked to my GI about this SIBO infection. And I'm like, okay, I can absolutely ask them about it, see if it's ever been tested for before, see about getting tested for it. And now I'm like, now why? Like, what came about from all of this stuff? And he has a colleague who's in Georgia. I'm in Texas. And he talked about going to this conference with his colleague, and his colleague would happen to be speaking. The colleague is a neurogastroenterologist, which my health centers, both of my health centers, neither of them have a neurogastroenterologist who specifically is what I'm supposed to be seeing, but it's not an option where I am. He said the colleague found a correlation between patients that have my whole rigmarole of EDS, POTS, MCAS, Sjogrens specifically, and SIBO, and a SIBO infection. And he found the correlation between the three, not to mention all of the GI problems. So he found a correlation between all of that the patients that were treated with IVIG, which is intravenous immunoglobulin, it's a blood product that's kind of synthesized from plasma donors. I'm familiar with it, but just because of something else. And this is a totally new treatment for any of this stuff, or a new use for IVIG. So the guy, his colleague, spoke about all of this conglomeration of things, and he presented the cases that he had already had that he was successfully treating, and he wrote a paper about it, and it was published in Mayo Clinic, and it was published December of 2017. So right now it's August of 2018. He told me the doctor's name, and if you guys want to look it up, it's Dr. Goodman, Goodman. And if you look up Sjogrens, SIBO, IVIG, and Dr. Goodman, you can find the paper. And they have since December, when that paper was published, they have since put together another study that had quite a few more patients that had the same kind of conglomeration of blah, and they're treating them with IVIG as well. With EDS and POTS and MCAS and whatnot, like those tend to kind of really go together, and GI issues and cardiac issues and all of that. The Sjogren's side of things, which is autoimmune, if you don't know anything about Sjogren's, real easy. It's like a deficiency in moisture. Like your salivary glands are affected, your tear ducts and glands are affected, and my entire GI tract is affected by it. I have been treated for Sjogren's for, this is 2018, so 2.5 years now, I guess. I've been on Plaquenil for that long. But because I don't weigh very much, I'm topped out as to how much Plaquenil I can take. And you know how like if somebody asks you a simple question and you just answer it, like, how are you doing today? Fine. Even if you're having like a rat-ass horrible day and you feel awful, like you just say fine, because that's how you answer. Him kind of like yanking the rug out from under me when he asked that question at the beginning of the appointment, like I really had to sit there and think about, like, how is my Sjogren's doing? And it's doing awful. Like it's never been this bad. And it was like, I don't know, it almost felt like a 2x4 across the back of my head, because you don't think about it. You're doing all the things you're supposed to. You're taking the medication, you're going to the appointments, you're doing all the eye drops, you're all of that stuff. And of course it's working. I'm doing all the things, but then you think about it and it's not. Like it just, I don't know, it really made me evaluate my medication kind of in a whole when he said that. He said, and then I asked him about the IVIG, and I was like, well, how is the IVIG supposed to help? We were really talking about GI issues. How is it supposed to help GI issues if it's like helping the Sjogren's, and like, oh, and it's a combo platter of meds that they do. It's, I'm so sorry. I think I have another sinus infection. It's a combo platter of meds that they do for this kind of like triumvirate of issues. So it's a certain kind of antibiotics that you have to take for like a good amount of time to fix the SIBO infection. It's IVIG that most of the people that have been successful have had it done like once a month, like they do an infusion once a month. And then there's something else, and I honestly don't remember what that one is at all whatsoever. And he was asking me, well, I asked him about how it works, like how is that supposed to fix one to the other? Well, we think that the Sjogren's is really causing a lot of the problems that I'm having with GI. Yes, it's a perfect storm, but it definitely could be one of the reasons why none of the medication that's supposed to be helping me is helping me at all. Not to mention I am the queen of side effects. Like it shows you have a side effect, I will get it. And so he's talking about it, and he was like, so the IVIG would be to fix the Sjogren's, and then the antibiotics would fix the SIBO, and it kind of has a trickle-down effect that would help your GI problems. And I'm like, okay. And he was like, so if you can fix the Sjogren's, excuse me, then the rest of it hopefully will settle down, at least give me some kind of relief, would be much better than what I'm dealing with now. And he said, so I asked him, I said, when you talk about fixing the Sjogren's, and I'm talking like Plaquenil, like those kind of things, like autoimmune like meds, And he was like, yes, exactly. And I was like, well, I've been on Plaquenil for 2.5 years, and I said it's worse now than it ever has been. Then he said, you know, definitely the next step would be IVIG to try to fix it. And the only thing I'd ever heard with IVIG is fixing like strictly immune problems, like CVID or any of that stuff that you're like immune deficient. And all of my like IgG and IgM and all of that, all of my blood work is okay. So my immune system is somewhat functional. And he said that IVIG would be the next step. And I'm like, but my immune system is somewhat functional. Like I still have my, you know, normal levels of immunoglobulins. And he said, yes, but with your autoimmune, like you may have more or less depending upon what your body actually needs, which made sense. So we talked about all that, and I had asked him if SIBO infection could be checked, like, is that something that you check during like an endoscopy or colonoscopy and whatever? And he said that he was so brand new to it, he literally had no idea, and I really needed to talk to my GI instead of trying the erythromycin, because he said, I know if you take the erythromycin, it will disturb, per se, the SIBO infection, which is necessary, which is what you want it to do, but not until you figure out that that's what you have, so that you can kind of, you know, wrap all of your hoobie awesome sauce into one big package. All of that made sense. It was a very down-to-earth appointment. Like, he literally just sat down and we've always just been able to just like talk. Like, he doesn't overwhelm you with information. Like, he doesn't sit there and make you feel rushed, or he's a really good cardiologist. So it was literally like sitting down, like talking to a friend and chatting about this stuff. Like, it was really cool. So I finished up my appointment. We went over my blood work, which of course like is always weird, but like it's weird in different ways. Like every time I have blood work, like sometimes my white blood cells are in the tank, sometimes my red blood cells are in the tank. This time, like, the size of my red blood cells was messed up. They reran my ANAs again, which is something for my autoimmune condition. They wanted to know if I still was testing positive with all the meds that I'm taking, and I am. There were several other things messed up. It was just kind of like general stuff. Oh, and I was malnourished and blah, blah, blah. So we went over the blood work, and then we've got follow-up appointments in October, and he was asking how like my POTS and stuff was doing, and it was doing really bad because I'd passed out 5 mornings in a row, exactly 20 minutes after I took one of my new GI meds, which is why I had to stop taking it. And I'm on like a new exercise program and whatnot for the POTS to try to help. But it's like a combo platter. Like the exercise coupled with the diet and increased liquid and whatnot is what's supposed to help. The problem is I can't tolerate increased liquid at the moment. My diet is so ridiculously messed up at the moment because I can't tolerate a big amount of food, like at all whatsoever. And I'm nauseous all the time, no matter how much nausea meds that I'm on. So in the exercise program that I'm on, it's very, very simple to start with, and like every 2 weeks you kind of like bump it up so you can ramp up and get, you know, better and healthier and whatnot, which totally makes sense, except one of the other side effects that I was having for the medication that I was on 2 medications ago, I guess, for the GI stuff, was horrible muscle cramps. And so I was just trying to like do the elliptical bike for like literally 6 minutes, and I'm dying because my legs hurt so bad because of the muscle cramping. It's been a struggle lately. And so we decided to keep my program how it is. They very much understand my struggles with food and trying to get proper nutrition and whatnot, not to mention liquid. And we're going to keep it how we have it right now, and then we're going to follow up in October. And in October, like, I'll rehab the metabolic stress test done, and we go through the same procedure. and figure out like what my baselines are and all that good stuff, and see if they are getting better with the program that I'm on, or if we're gonna have to start trying medication and whatnot for the POTS, which I really don't want to have to do because I'm already on so much medication. We'll just have to see kind of like how it goes. So, oh, and then he also wanted me to talk to obviously my rheumatologist, which is over my Sjogrens, to see if she had ever tried IVIG for it, you know, anything. Has she ever heard of the combo platter of the SIBO and the Sjogrens and all that stuff? So I sent a message to my rheumatologist that night, and I told her about the paper and the correlation that they found, and that treating with IVIG, and she sent me a message back that was kind of, you know, we can absolutely talk about it, you know, what about this? And she threw some other things out there, which was super cool. And then I also sent a message to my GI and asked her about the SIBO infection, and, you know, have we ever tested for it? Can we test for it? We have never tested for it before. How you're tested for it is something called a hydrogen breath test. So you have to stop medication that affects the test a week in advance. So I'm in that week now, which is partly why my GI stuff is so bad, because I had to stop all 4 of my meds for my GI problems. That's really, really rough. And then the day before, you have to have a special diet. You have to stop eating at a certain amount of time. And then the day of, like, you can't do anything, no exercise, you can't have anything to eat or drink, no breath mints, no smoking, no any of that stuff. And then it's a 3.5-hour test. So I have the test in 3 days, and I'll keep you guys posted on how that goes and kind of follow up with you on the rest of it as we go. So, oh my Lord, some days it rains and some days it pours, so we'll see how it goes. So I hope you guys like it. Give me a like and subscribe below, and I'll see you later. Bye.